Hello, welcome to another coffee break with Kardec. Our quarter of an hour break to have some coffee, tea, hot chocolate, or any cold drink you wish. And during that time, we usually bring something from the book Genesis for us to have as food for thoughts. And today we are going to talk about signs of the time, which is in chapter 18 of Genesis. And signs of the times we've been hearing for a long time, in fact, that our planet is undergoing a moment of change, of very fast changes. And when we say fast, we don't mean 1 or 2 years for it to completely happen. It is actually a process that may take several decades, if not some centuries, until we finally move from one situation that we find ourselves, or we've been finding ourselves experiencing here on our planet, and to a different situations. And when we talk about changes, we talk not only on the physical level, not only for those incarnate here in the physical world, but also for those in the spirit who are part of the population, general population of our planet. And we know that the time set by God has come. And, we hear that everywhere. And this time is the time for great events occur for the regeneration of humankind. We're moving from one condition of a world that is more inferior into a world of regeneration, where people will have, or the population of the planet on both physical and spiritual sides will pay more attention to spiritual virtues instead of vices that we bring with us since our creation. This is a natural process. So then we ask ourselves, in what sense must these prophetic words be understood? And this prophetic words by disbelievers, they are seen as something of no importance whatsoever, because they see it as an expression of a childish, unfounded belief. So it implies in this position the denial of providence. So for disbelievers, there's no work of providence. There are no natural laws that we follow, that we obey. There is no progress that is part of this greater work of evolution that has been designed and implemented by God through his natural laws, but also through his presence in the creation. But for the majority of people, of believers, it contains some mystical and supernatural side or aspect. Then they are on the opposite side. And this supernatural or mystical view, it seems it is a sign of upheaval of the laws of nature, meaning that the natural laws, the laws of nature won't be obeyed, or they will be transformed, things will be totally different. We see that, people expecting cataclysms and, all sorts of upheavals here and there, and perhaps complete annihilation of our planet in a view of a natural phenomenon taking place here, or something that comes from space. But this is part of our human nature, and especially since we are moving from a more primitive condition where we knew very little about the natural laws around us, and everything was actually mystical, supernatural, and had the power unknown power to destroy us, to destroy life and destroy the planet, the world as such. But then we see that these words, they do not declare the disruption of natural laws, but in fact, the fulfillment of natural laws. One aspect very important here is how much do we know of natural laws? How much we know about the effects of these natural laws? If we look at the simply material aspect of life, we see that our sciences are still understanding natural laws, physical laws, because the more universal natural laws, when we talk about natural divine laws, we are talking about the laws that govern everything, physical and non-physical or spiritual. Whereas when we talk about the physical laws, are just derived special instances of these more general laws. And then we have our physical laws, and we know that the processes, the transformation of matter in our physical world, of course, they obey these physical laws. But even the physical laws that we know, we have, for instance, the law of gravity, electromagnetic, nuclear forces, and all these governed by laws. They are responsible for structuring dense matter as we know it. But even in science that has been studying these natural laws for a long time, there's nothing that is final in what we know. What we know is the result, of course, of observation and experiments. And then we have theories that explain. But when we go and look in details about these theories, we see that some are accepted because they explain many facts. Some are not that well accepted, although we have some branching in terms of these theories and the explanations. But sometimes they are not well accepted, but there's still some people who believe in them, who accept them, and even apply them to explain certain phenomena. But then we see that what we know is still part of something much greater. That is the side of it that we don't know. We are learning. So we are going through this process. So when we say the fulfillment of natural laws, although when we look at the picture, we imagine, for instance, the evolution of our planet Earth on the physical side. It's taken 4.5 billion years since its formation. 4.5 billion years. If we take a picture there, a special moment, it may be just a picture short, a part of it, representing 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, 100 years, we'll see that that is nothing compared to the whole. That sometimes what seems to be a catastrophe is not a catastrophe. It's part of a process that is harmonious, that will lead in collective terms to something much better. If we followed picture by picture the development of our planet Earth along the way, looking at these pictures in the past, we would never believe, just looking at some of these pictures, never believe that we would get to the point that we got today, where there is balance, there is harmony, where it is possible for us to exist in physical terms here with this body that has evolved over the past 200,000 years to the point that we are. So we see that there is a process of evolution that on a day-to-day basis, it doesn't seem sometimes to be harmonious, but when we look at the end result, we see that yes, there is harmony, there is improvement. For instance, the formation of first stars, we have the theory of Big Bang. From the Big Bang, we had the formation of hydrogen and helium. Hydrogen and helium got together to form, let's say, we could say dense stars, the first stars, until the point that they were so compact They were so dense that they ignited, bringing light. But then we had only hydrogen and helium. We needed to go through a process of destroying these first stars to get, I would say, a second generation of stars. And during this process, heavier elements were formed. So we see that we go through this process of evolution, but we also go through the same process in spiritual terms, in moral and intellectual terms. So evolution takes, different aspects. We evolve in different aspects at the same time, but sometimes not at the same pace. Sometimes we evolve intellectually faster than morally, but in the end, we have to, bring everything together. And there are special moments when all these converge and there is an acceleration. It's like almost getting to the end of a degree when we then jump to the following degree. But to jump to the following degree, we need to get to the end of the previous one. More or less like that. Sometimes it's a bit difficult to find comparisons, but I like comparisons. Sometimes I try to simplify things to make it more palatable, as it were. So everything in the creation is harmony, and we see the fulfillment of these laws of evolution, and it's very interesting because then we obey one law, which is the law of progress. We are in a point in our planet here, we are talking about the planet Earth, where the physical side and the spiritual side, and when I talk spiritual side, I talk about moral aspect of spirits, and I talk about intellectual aspects of the spirits. On the physical side, we know science has proven that we have evolved, things have transformed themselves. Primitive life here was very different from what it is now, what we understand as life in the physical sense, not life in the broader sense that evolved the existence of spirits. But then morally, we went through transformations as well. And the purification of incarnate and discarnate spirits that populate Earth. We are more evolved now than we were in the past, or 100 or 200,000 years ago. So we see that both areas of progress, they march together, as I said before, sometimes not at the same pace, but we have these special moments. And Signs of the Times is very much related to these special moments of transformation that every system undergoes every now and again. So, as I said before, physically speaking, the planet is more habitable today, is more perfected, there's more beauty today in our planet than there was, a long time ago during the process of formation. Also, here we know it's incontestable that there is development of intelligence, development of moral sense, softening of the customs. So we see that these happen. Sometimes it's not a linear process. Sometimes we go through like a pendulum. We go forwards and backwards and forwards and backwards. But with that, like a spiral, we are moving forward because it's important to get things into the right place. And sometimes it's not a straightforward process. So, and also when it occurs in different levels, in physical levels, in intellectual, moral levels, it happens at certain areas of the planet before being a widespread movement. I usually compare to water flowing down the terrain. We have, an inclined terrain, and water is released at the top and then starts to follow. But then, depending on how uneven this terrain is, the water will then converge to lower areas to follow along those areas. And then when the terrain is flat again, it will spread itself and carry on following, showing that there are moments where the flow is different from other moments, depending on the conditions that it is faced. So, in general terms, this process, physical, spiritual, and the spiritual in dual aspects, moral and intellectual, is slow, it's gradual, it's imperceptible. But there are moments, as I mentioned before, where there is this convergence. As I said, in the terrain, where all the water converges to a narrow region, and then will flow in a different regime along that, to then open again further down when it's flat. So we have, moments that is imperceptible and moments that the changes are very abrupt. And these movements, they are subordinated. It's very interesting. On the one hand, the details of these movements of progress, they obey, or, they respect, they are subordinated to human free will. The details. So it's not fatalistic or deterministic in this aspect, because we always have our free will. God respects our free will. It's something that we have with us and is constantly respected. So things are not prepared. What we know is that the water that was released at the top will get at the bottom, or we get to the ocean. This is fatalistic. This is certain, deterministic. But the details, how it's going to move along the terrain, well, that is not certain, because we may just, by making use of our free will, we may just place a stone in the path of this water that is flowing, and then we'll change the course of the water. It will go around the stone instead of going through the area where the stone has been placed. We'll go around. So the free will, which is the stone that has been placed there, changes locally the course of the water, the movement of the water. But in general terms, it is as a whole fatalistic or deterministic, meaning that it obeys, they are subject, the whole movement is subject to laws, universal laws, divine laws, perfect laws. As I said before, how it's going to find its way down, it very much depends on the terrain, it depends on our free will, but it's certain that it will get to the bottom or get to the ocean. So it's something that it's certain. So we see that it is a combination of these, and also it obeys obeys God's laws. And the beauty of it is that God is incessantly watching it. So it's not just that God has created the divine laws and left us alone to follow the laws on our own. No, we always there. God is always present. And the spirits who populate the space, they are God's ministers. They are charged with the details according to the attributions corresponding to the degree of advancement, meaning that each and every spirit, in respecting their level of evolution at a certain time, at a certain point, they are responsible together with God for this process in the universe. So there are laws, there is God overlooking the whole creation and participating, of course, and there's also the contribution of each and every intelligent being in the creation, who, as it been placed here by Kardec, the the ministers assigned by God to take part in the creation. So when we are told that we are co-creators in the universe, yes, we are co-creators in the universe, and this is the beauty of it. Well, this is just an overview, an introduction to this chapter, the signs of the times, it's actually go into deeper details about these, greater details about this process of transformation that I hope we can bring to another coffee break with Kardec and further discuss this subject. It is very interesting. But this is what I had for our coffee break today, and hope to see you in another coffee break with Kardec in the future. Bye-bye for now.